Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. This is the Tesla Roadster podcast version of it. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning. Welcome, everybody.
And what we have here is a background picture of what AI thinks a Tesla Roadster looks like that has a bunch of collectors clustered around it, looking at it to buy the car. And this was a kind of a wishful thinking because right now there's a glut of used Roadsters in the market. Mm-hmm. Prices are somewhat depressed, and we thought we would let AI convince the collectors in this picture, at least, that this was a coveted, sought-after car. Speaking of that, let's bring up a picture, VIN 1407, and same color car, actually, electric blue, just finished on Bring a Trailer. It was sitting at $65,000 for a long time, and I noticed that it sold for $86,500 January 21st, and it'll pop up here in a second. There we go. It had 54,000 miles on the clock, VIN 1407. This is definitely beginning to improve a bit because, remember, we've seen sales as low as $75,000, $80,000, you know.
Yeah, this is a little bit higher than that, but to me, the encouraging part is that this is a little bit higher mileage than some of those others. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that $73,000 Roadster had like 23,000 miles on it or something like that, and had a new one that was around this price had a brand new R80 pack in it.
Oh yeah, that was like a $90,000 what that reached. It was just absurd.
Yeah, with a $40,000 pack that had been replaced 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, 45 with tax. Remember?
Oh yes.
But yeah, what it looks like with this car is the successful bidder seemed very excited to get the car. It looks like it's going to be well preserved, taken care of, and a nice transition, that's what we always like to see.
By all means.
And then looks like that's a comment from the last show. We usually are running the first hour is our EV show, and then we go into the Roadster podcast show. We had someone contact us from the website that is a Roadster owner. And the reason I bring this up is there is, of course, a census program out there, the Roadster Census. And it allows you as an owner to register your car. We don't post any personal information other than car-related, the VIN, the color, whether it has what type of battery upgrade it has, if any. And the fundamental reason for this census program 2-3 years ago was to let the community and Tesla, most importantly, know how many of you guys are left out there. How many do they need to prepare for in order to rebuild battery packs, for example? And no one was really sure until we got the census program running. And according to the program, it's looking like about 2,000 owners are left, which is pretty substantial when you think about only 2,412 or so were built.
Well, and I think about where Tesla was at when we started that census program in around 2017, I think is about the time that we started it. Tesla had just discontinued their 3.0 battery pack. It was looking like they were getting ready to just completely drop support for the Roadster. It was hard to get any information on it or anything. And that's been such a dramatic turnaround in the last 5 or 6 years that we've had this program up.
And prices plummeted. You could buy a functioning Roadster on eBay for $45,000.
In some cases, even lower, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we count on you guys in the community to keep this thing updated. And here's a good example of why that's important. This particular Roadster sold on Bring a Trailer, and it was still listed as being owned by the original owner. But instead of being in one city, it was now in another. And what this owner was telling us is that we have 2 entries out there, and we now trimmed that down to 1. We don't get notified. Bring a Trailer doesn't tell us, hey, here's the new owner of that vehicle that you guys have been tracking, So this is the only way that we can do updates is if we hear from you. If you're selling a Roadster on our Roadster matchmaking site, that happens automatically because as a new owner is identified, we then update the census program. The other thing that was confusing for this owner was she saw 3 of the same VIN numbers for this car. Well, 2 of them were because it got sold and the original owner was still listed in our system and now updated, but then it still had 2. The reason for that is VIN control. in the Tesla Roadster world was not perfect. You will have Euro cars that have the same VIN as the US cars. And then it gets even more complicated because you might have an engineering prototype, VIN number 3. And then you have a validation prototype, VIN number 3. Then you have a Signature 100 VIN number 3. And then you've got a European VIN number 3. So you could conceivably have 4 Tesla Roadsters with the same VIN.
That's especially true on the really low ones.
Right. So we did update, and again, we count on the owners updating us. Any of you, by the way, that want to chime in, we ask that you tell us where you're coming in from. Our audience always likes to see the kind of reach that these podcasts get, and it's all over the globe typically. All right. So here's a customer that came to us, and he said, my Roadster is a higher mileage car, and because I like everything new, I've been making some cosmetic updates. When looking at the AC vents, I noticed that the chrome trim is pitted and looking worn. Very common, by the way. That little circular chrome ring that sits around on top of the dash, of course, on those louvers. It's not uncommon for that to get pitted and to show some signs of aging.
Sure.
So this particular customer went to the Tesla EPC site. He looked up vent face level round chrome part, and the car uses 4, but he decided to order 1 just to make sure that he gets the right part. 2 days later, it arrived. The first good news here is parts like this aren't in production anymore. So the fact that Tesla has parts available is remarkable.
Yeah, that was remarkable.
15 years later even.
Yeah.
Right? All right. So 2 days later it arrived, but when inspecting the part, he says, I noticed it was covered in dust and the chrome bezel had pitting worse than mine. And the part was packed in a new Ziploc bag. So he said, his thought was that it is Tesla shipping, sending used parts through the Tesla EPC from cars they've acquired through the buyback program. Remember, Tesla buys back Tesla Roadsters to help keep parts inventories filled so that you guys in the community are able to still get parts. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we reactivate a lot of old Tesla Roadster vendors, and a common question comes up. Well, we could certainly start the production line again for this particular product, but the minimum order quantity is X. And it's usually well in excess of the 2,000 owners that might eventually buy that part from us. So no one in this industry is willing to put all of those parts in inventory, knowing that they will never sell.
Well, yeah, and I mean, X is not, I've heard 20,000 is that X number at times. I've heard 25,000.
It depends on the part.
Kind of depending on the part. Well, why would you ever have 20,000 of something made if you only have 2,000 cars for those 20,000 pieces to go into?
And, there are a few of us in the industry that have taken, we will bite the bullet, and we will actually have some of this product recreated. And even though suspecting down deep that we may never sell them all, but we have enough requests for the parts, we try to service the community. But so anyway, my response to him was, based on your description, the buyback program feeding parts into inventory is most likely the cause. Many Roadster parts have been out of production for years, and reordering usually carries a ridiculously high minimum order quantity requirement, which cannot be justified with only 2,000 owners left. Then I say Tesla has spent millions on the buyback program to give owners parts, some of which will be then used. We do not have this particular part in stock as a brand new part. We have the same thing Tesla would have, which is used vents, and ours may be like yours. Now, again, at this point, I want to insert something. It's very, very generous for Tesla to continue to supply parts for a car that's been out of production for 15 years, 12 to 15 years. Most manufacturers won't do that. They have no requirement. There's this misconception that there's a federal mandate that you have to keep parts in stock for cars or for any product for that matter. It's untrue, especially with this much time having gone by. They're doing this out of the kindness of their hearts.
Pretty much. And, this is why when an automotive maker makes a run of a vehicle, they'll let that model year sit for 2 or 3 years so that they have enough business support providing parts to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And here in the Roadsters, we only had 2,000 vehicles, so it's been harder to do. I don't know of any automaker outside of Tesla that would have gone out and said, yeah, we'll go ahead and figure out a way to keep this going.
Right. And in the critical power world, which is where we also reside, a common practice is when a technology gets old, a product gets old, and we're talking about maybe 5 to 7 years, they say, well, service contracts are going to end in a year. Parts will no longer be available in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And here's your upgrade path. Get another newer model UPS from us.
Yeah. And we're talking about things that may cost tens of thousands of dollars, and
Mm-hmm.
we're having to give that communication out to people.
Mm-hmm. Just like the cars, by the way.
Just like the cars.
Some of these UPSs are $250,000, $500,000 for the
Mm-hmm.
large ones.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, what I did as an additional step, I contacted Tesla, talked to corporate, and their response was, and I sent them photos of what the customer has in his car and what he received from the EPC team. They said, it's hard to tell from the photo, but it looks almost as if it was kept in a warehouse a long time versus being off a vehicle. I will let the EPC team know. And he's usually pretty good about getting back to me about issues like this, so we'll
Mm-hmm.
report once we get some information back. All right.
I have to say, that's also impressive that we've got that open line with Tesla and they're responsive, and it helps the community.
Definitely, yes. Yep, they don't have to do any of this. Hey, Jesse, if you can bring up a picture called Clips. This is something we posted on Facebook and created on our e-store. In the Tesla Roadster, by the passenger, in front of the passenger seat, you have that little airbag cover. And it has 4 clips that are breakaway clips, basically. So when the airbag launches, those clips snap, and the airbag can then protect the occupant in your car.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these clips with age get old, brittle, they're plastic, and they're designed to break free if the airbag is deployed. Unfortunately, due to age, someone mistaking this airbag cover for a glove compartment, and that has happened, by the way. We're going to talk about the stolen Roadster in Fort Lauderdale here shortly. And one of the problems with the Roadster once they retrieved it was this airbag cover was dangling and loose. And more than likely, it's because the thieves thought, hey, we're not finding cool stuff in this car. Maybe this is the glove compartment. And they grabbed the bottom of it and ripped it open.
Oh, boy.
So the part is now currently available. It is on our e-store. It comes in a set of 4, and they're very easy to install. As you can see, Ramiro there, he's just simply unscrewing the old broken one and screwing in the new one by hand. It doesn't require any special tools. So those are now available for those of you that have a loose airbag cover in your passenger compartment.
Do you need to get these in sets of 4? Is it recommended to replace all 4 at once?
Yeah, it's recommended. They're so cheap. I think we're selling them for $19.95 or something for a set of 4. And now you've got, newer plastic that isn't as brittle as the old stuff that came out of the car. And this is in a hostile section of the car. It's directly below the windshield. And, during summer, you're going to have the sun baking that black piece or that black cover. Mm-hmm. And there's some heat transfer that's going to occur to these plastic clips. Hendrik Eber is chiming in, and he says they have already abandoned right-hand drive, no S or X in Australia. I did not know that.
I did not know that either. And Australia, I do think, is like Britain, where you
the right-hand drive, yeah.
Yeah, where it's right-hand drive.
One of our customers just found a Radiant Red Roadster in Australia, New Zealand, actually, and he's been enjoying driving it there. I don't know if you've ever driven in a right-hand a drive
I have
place.
not.
I was a passenger on a two-decker bus at Heathrow Airport once, and I was jet-lagged with the family, and I was sitting there, and I had these visions of getting into an accident because it just didn't feel right. I have no idea how I would be able to drive a car on public roads, on the freeway, on the wrong side of the road.
Sure. Oh, and again, a story from my way back. Friend who grew up in England, and his father was used to right-hand drive, and driving on the left side of the road. Driving in America, he always had a tendency to drift left.
Really? Yeah.
It just felt wrong to him, he said.
All right, got another picture here we'll have Jesse throw up. This one is, let's see here. Bear with me.
I saw it there earlier, so it's...
Oh, there it is. Bunker expansion. Yep, there we go. And what I threw out here was, and I'll read it to you. I was proud of my narrative here.
Sure.
There is something zen-like about milling corian samples for the Tesla Roadster battery sheet bumpers, which will be installed in the battery bunker to keep the cores on life support. Battery sheets, basically. These custom parts are being milled on a Bridgeport mill and will act as a non-conductive bumper for Roadster sheets kept on life support, ready to be deployed at a moment's notice to keep another Roadster on the road. These repaired cores are available for Roadsters with sheet problems beyond standard recovery procedures. We do a couple of recovery procedures with batteries, and it's one of our highest volume activities. 90% of the time we repair the sheets. We can find that resistive cell. If it hasn't been bricked too long, then it's an easy repair for us. Occasionally, though, if the time between the car no longer charging and it arrives at our service center is too long, 6 months to a year, for example, there are times when we need a sheet replacement because we just can't bring that brick back to life.
Right.
Too many compromised cells in that brick of 69. So I say great machining tools like this, some donuts, some Starbucks coffee, and a great Cuban cigar make it worth going in on a Sunday morning to continue to build out the Gruber Motor Company Roadster repair capabilities. What you see here is corian, which is the same stuff that some of your counters are made of. It is a space-age material that replicates the natural stone-type counters. It's very durable, but it can also be repaired. You can sand it. You can buff it back out. It's a pretty cool material. And what I noticed is that on a Bridgeport mill with a sharp mill bit, it cuts wonderfully, smooth as can be, nice sharp edges, and flat surfaces. So what this is turning into is, if we can bring up picture 0000, in our battery bunker, which is where we do the charging for all of the modules and sheets, modules for the later Teslas and sheets for the Tesla Roadster.
How many did you say? 4 zeros?
4 zeros, yeah. You'll see that the corian is used quite often here. Down below, we have a bumper, a corian bumper, which stops the Tesla Roadster sheet from sliding back any further.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we use corian is because it's non-conductive. I'd love to use billet aluminum because it shapes just as nicely as corian, but putting a piece of metal on a battery like this would result in fireworks. So we use corian, and the pieces that I was milling on the lathe or on the Bridgeport mill there are the forks that are right behind me there. And what those are for is to contain either the sheet or the module. By the way, in a Roadster, a battery sheet is called a sheet. In a later model version, they call them modules, but it's the same basic design. It's a collection of 18650 cells connected in a combination of series and parallel. So if we go to image number 000, you can see how nicely this contains the module in this case, and this is a Tesla Model S module. You certainly don't want these things falling over while they're on the charging bench, because if you have some metal and they fall on that, you're going to have, again, fireworks. So you can see how nicely that contains the sheet and prevents it from falling. And let's take a look at picture number 0. And here you can see the expansion. We have an east and a west side in this battery bunker, and we just doubled the capacity in this, and that's why we needed those parts or those bumpers milled out. What you're seeing here is a combination of Tesla Roadster sheets that are being kept on life support. Every single sheet slot or module slot has a DC to DC converter that allows us to dial in a voltage and a charging current. And it will actually stop once it reaches that current level, so it's fully controlled and very safe. In the foreground there, behind Mark, you're seeing a Tesla Roadster battery with some sheets populated in it. So that's what that milling picture was about.
You know, and we, for everybody out there, we use that bunker on a regular basis. It's a very important safety feature that we have. You've talked a couple of times about the fireworks. You never know when something might go awry, and it would always be spectacular and not in a bad way if something went awry on one of those batteries.
As we well know.
Unfortunately. That battery bunker will keep everything else safe if something bad happens to one of those batteries. So,
well, the strategy there was to get the out-of-car battery sheets away from the cars that are in the service center.
yes.
So any kind of risky activity outside the battery management safety systems in the car are done in the battery bunker, which is fully self-contained and separate from the main building.
Yes, and another nice thing with that is that you notice there are no windows in that battery bunker.
Right.
There is only that one door, and if something bad were to happen, close up that door, seal it up, and then you're going to deplete the oxygen in that area, and it's almost like a fire blanket.
So here's an interesting item: the new Tesla Roadster, which still is not a reality. It's no one's taking deliveries. In other words,
Right.
I found some interesting background on that. The second generation Tesla Roadster was initiated at the time of announcement with a complete team of engineers and developers. In fact, the Roadster and the Model 3 were designed at the same time and share the same battery platform, but with different battery and motor technology.
Interesting.
They say in this article, even though the Cybertruck is a better investment because, Elon thought the Cybertruck is a better investment because Tesla needed to compete in the truck category.
Well, I can understand that. We've talked recently about how the non-truck category of vehicles in the United States is about 20% of the total market, and the truck and SUV category is the other 80%. So that totally makes sense.
And in the meantime, though, they had announced the performance specifications of the second generation Tesla Roadster, and it inspired and motivated some other companies to do some great things. One of them was Rimac, which now came out with a sub-2-second Navara a year after Tesla's announcement for this new Tesla Roadster. But it costs $2.4 million, so the Roadster, second generation, still had a chance of winning the market. Then the Model S refresh came out, and it stole the 1.9 second 0 to 60 that was purported to go with the Roadster.
Sure.
So Elon decided that Tesla would have a better chance of winning the truck people rather than the hypercar people. Now, that's according to this article. I don't think anyone actually asked Elon that question, and I don't think Elon would have admitted, even though that might have been the cause.
It's logical. We'll say it that way.
Yeah. So the article continues. Who knows? Maybe the 5 engineers are still working on the Roadster at the very back of the room with a whiteboard. And the problem was that that Elon was super hyped at the time that he announced those big numbers. Now his engineers had to come up with a 600-mile range battery to boot.
Sure.
Now, we just talked about that in the last podcast. The reason that one of our viewers thought that the exotic car manufacturers were staying with small range batteries and small batteries was because of the space constraints in the car and because of weight. Well, a 600-mile battery is going to have some weight. And if they can truly fit that into a car the size smaller than a Model 3, that would be pretty remarkable.
It absolutely would be remarkable to see.
So they say that given the look and theme of the Cybertruck, Tesla should have waited on the Cybertruck for the future and finished and released the Roadster. Now, here's somebody that wanted that Roadster pretty badly.
I think so
Yeah.
too.
And of course, you have to put the marketing people into the equation here. What would have generated more revenue? Excuse me.
Well, I mean,
Go ahead.
that's an easy one. If you're looking at dollars and cents, it's a Cybertruck. Right? We just talked about it. 80% of the market's a truck market. 20% is a car.
Right. And of course, they had 2 million back orders with the Cybertruck.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't think they had anywhere near that with the new Roadster.
No, and it's I'm sure that part of the thinking on not pushing forward quite so fast on the Roadster had to be something like Rimac.
Yeah.
At first, people said, "Oh, sub 2 second, that's impossible. You're going to shred the rubber on the tires."
Right.
It's absolutely impossible. Then the next thing you know, Rimac has come out with their 1.74 second Navara supercar. And even though it's $2.4 million, they just proved that, yeah, you can actually get sub 2 second times on a standard production car that your average Joe could, go in and plop down $2.5 million and buy.
Can you imagine being a tire manufacturer, like Michelin, for example? And I can just see what's going on in their meetings, in the boardrooms. These guys just won't stop. They keep on increasing the performance needs for these tires. Where are we going to get this technology from? Now they want to go 250 miles an hour, 300 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's got to be fun. So the article continues here. They say, I know you love Tesla, but Tesla holding this much money for this long and invested is kind of unethical. And they're talking about the down payment on this new second generation Roadster.
Right.
The original signature cars that they were going to release would set you back a full $250,000.
Yeah, they required full payment up front when they announced it.
Yeah. And the Cybertruck, on the other hand, had a different, a down payment. Was that $100 or something like that?
$150 or something like that, yeah.
And if you sat on that for 3 to 4 years, I don't think anybody's going to lose as much sleep as $250,000. The strongest argument I hear with this type of a down payment is, if I had taken that $250K and put that into Tesla stock instead of this down payment, I would be a multimillionaire at this point.
That's right.
So, but anyway, if you look at the product, they say, you'll see that the Model 3 performance is the best performance for money paid. And if you think about it, they say the Model 3 performance in some ways is actually the Roadster. Anyway, it's an opinion.
It's kind of a stretch there, but this just reminds me of Elon back this last year, openly telling the press, "Hey, we've still got an engineering team working on the Roadster. I can't promise when. Don't hold me down. I'm hopeful that it'll be 2024. Not totally sure, but what you do need to know is that we have a team of people working on this Roadster. We're going to get it. Mm-hmm. It's just not going to be as fast as you want."
Right. No projections that I'm aware of at this point. If anybody wants to chime in, if they've heard any ETAs, that would be wonderful. We had another thing pop up, and this is from Facebook. The question is anyone aware of recent battery replacements on Roadsters at the service centers?
Yeah.
And of course, that happens all the time. We get feedback constantly. We just had 2 of them come back from the Tempe Service Center that were put in within the last month. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, another 2 or so within that month. She was saying that I tried to contact Tesla Service for a status update on our brick Roadster. I also emailed Roadster Service NA, but no reply as of yet. We had recommended in the past that Roadster Service NA is one good way to reach Tesla if you're unable to get through to the service centers, because that can be a problem. You have an app that you're supposed to use. Well, the app doesn't necessarily relate to the Roadster.
Right.
And if you're local and your car is here in Phoenix, like in this particular case, then you get through to the local service center rather than to the one that has your car. So then someone piped up, actually Eric in Texas. He says, well, actually mine is going in next week for the 80 kW pack. They were actually very fast. My car died in July, and they had a new pack ready by November. I had to ask them to give it to the next person in line, as it wasn't a good time for me. He actually went to the Orient, to Thailand, I think. And he said another pack arrived just 3 weeks later. So it looks like, and this is the Houston Service Center, I believe. It looks like Houston has a pretty good allocation, just like Tempe. They keep on coming in, and you're able to get cars through there. So anyway, I'd like to post a picture to show you how we communicate with Tesla, and it's called Bricked List. For those of you that have cars here, or have sent cars here, and it turns out that that it was bricked too long. And by the way, we usually do a very good job of getting the log files and determining whether your car is a recovery candidate before we suggest you bring it in. But there are a few that slip through. And this, for example, is the list. And that was after we removed a couple of them already. I think there are about 12 or 13 on this list. And we've intentionally blocked out the personal information. But this list of cars waiting for a 3.0 pack is what is regularly sent to the local Tesla service center. So they get an idea of how long they've been waiting, what the configuration of the car is, et cetera, et cetera. And so again, in this case, we sent that off yesterday, and we're waiting for a response from them as to when this particular car can get in line for the battery pack replacement. Now, one of the things that I posted then on Facebook, because a question came up, well, what's taking so long? All right. First of all, we, Gruber Motor Company, have little control over local Tesla Tempe, Arizona service center and scheduling with 3.0 packs. All we can do is give them an itemized list of who's waiting, how long they've been waiting, and then it's up to them to respond. There are also numerous variables, including many other service centers drawing on this limited production handmade item, like Houston, for example.
Right.
And let's not forget the fact that these are very limited production. There are no robotics involved. There are actually human beings in Lathrop that are putting these packs together. They're handmade. And that's just in the U.S. Now we've got overseas requirements as well. And again, we have no control. We don't have their production schedule. We don't have any kind of list that shows us where these packs are being allocated and what new ones have popped up that are required. Then there's some other items. There may be recently installed 3.0 packs that have failed, which now get replacement priority under warranty. And I don't have to tell the community, but those of you that have gotten packs replaced, they don't always come up flying. Oftentimes, there's a problem in the pack. And I'll tell you another reason for that. There's usually a reason that Roadster got bricked. Some of the reasons may be negligence. It didn't get charged often enough.
Right.
People forgot to charge it. It went to a body shop and they didn't charge it correctly. And those are fairly obvious. But then there are other issues. The PEM may have failed. It's unable to charge. Some other electronics have failed. Well, all of that has to be unraveled after a battery replacement, and that also takes time. And those variables you can't quantify. You don't know how many Roadsters that came in for a 3.0 pack upgrade are going to have additional problems that cause the original bricking. So that will delay things at times.
I think that's one of the reasons that we have such a long list, is that it's not just people who slip through the cracks and say, yeah, we have a recoverable battery, oops, we don't, but rather people who come to us and say, hey, my battery is bad, I know it's bricked, I know it's hard bricked, but you know what? While I'm waiting for the pack, let's go ahead and do the PEM rebuild. Let's go ahead and do the brakes. Let's go ahead and do and they bring it here to have the pack put in line to go to Tempe while we do all the deferred maintenance services that the car has been waiting for, in some cases for several years.
Sure. And in some cases, the pack gets installed at the service center. Then the service center calls us and says, well, it looks like there's a problem outside the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask the customer and us, do we want to repair that? And the car then ends up coming to us for the final repair.
Right.
So those are things that may delay things as well. Then finally, there may also be service center allotments involved. We don't know that, but maybe if Houston has used up 8 packs and Tempe has only used 6, then Tempe gets the next 2.
Right.
So those are all the variables. And again, we provide them a list. We've been doing that since 2022, and it was based on a request by Tesla. We'd like to see what your list looks like so we can combine it with ours.
Mm-hmm.
And now getting back to that list, on the census program, you'll see that there are some Roadsters that have been waiting for a battery pack for a few years. And the reason for that is, initially, when we began to provide our list to Tesla, they would contact the owners and say, okay, we've got a pack for you. And oftentimes these were owners that were requesting an elective battery replacement, not because their car had quit, but because they wanted something future-proof and they wanted to get rid of their old pack.
Yeah, they wanted the new pack. They wanted the 300 miles.
Right.
Whatever reason, but that it's not that they had a dead-on arrival car.
And I think what happened from that was there was such a large demand that the lead times grew to a year or 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
which was unbearable for the owners because in the meantime, you had Roadsters that had died. Now they became garage furniture for a year or 2. So Tesla did the smart thing. They said, at this point, we're going to suspend elective battery replacements. We're only going to allow hard brick Roadsters to come in for a battery replacement. And that's what began to speed things up again now.
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious that their production capacity is low enough that it's still 3 or 4 months in a lot of cases to get a pack, even though they've had this program in place now for what, 3 years?
Yeah. Now Eric says that it's been a couple of months. I remember July. By September he had a pack. Then he opted out, probably thinking it's going to be another few months. Within 3 weeks, they said, "Oh, we got another pack for you."
Yeah, that's good news. That's
All right. Another item here. We have a customer that has one of the 2016 Roadster battery packs. Now, in 2016, for those of you unfamiliar, Tesla came out with their first 3.0 replacement pack. This took the cells from a 2.2 amp hour cell to a 3.2 amp hour cell, which changed the kW on the pack from 53 to 80 kW, which then gave it that extended range. And there were a number of customers that at the time believed that the life expectancy of a Tesla Roadster battery pack was going to be 10 years because that was the anticipated lifespan.
That's what Tesla thought for a long time.
So they wanted to get ahead of the curve. They wanted to be proactive, so they had their batteries replaced in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
The long and short of it is the 2016 effort, the R80 battery packs in 2016 were flawed. There is an impedance problem in the cells, and what is manifesting later on now that these cars have aged more, aged to like 8 years or more, is an anemic performance problem. And what I mean by that is, typically a Tesla Roadster, when you give it a 100% throttle call, that's also called mashing the pedal, all right? It will pin you back in the seat. And if you have a 2.X Roadster, you can watch your kW meter go from vertical all the way down to the right to 200 kW. That's how you can tell you've got a healthy battery pack. These 2016 packs have trouble getting out of their own way.
Yes.
There was a car that just sold, actually, where the suspicion came up. It's a 2016 pack. It may have anemic battery issues, and a video was posted showing that, oh, look, the car can actually get up out of its way. Well, in the video also was that kW meter. and it showed it going down to not 200 kW, but to like 180 or so, and then tapering off fairly quickly, which is also one of the indications that you have an anemic battery pack that's losing power.
Yeah, that's one of the first signs that the pack is starting to lose power, is that not only does it not go to 200, it doesn't hold. With a good battery pack, you'll go to 200 and it will hold there for several seconds.
And if you're used to driving Roadsters, you'll feel the difference, even if it's been gradual and subtle, because you're used to driving it a certain way, maybe on the same roads, and suddenly you can't get on the freeway at the same speed that you used to be able to.
Right.
I can tell immediately because I test drive Roadsters, and even those subtle differences are very apparent to me or anyone that drives multiple Roadsters. There's also what's called a squishy pedal feel. When you press down and you give it more throttle, it won't respond right away. In fact, sometimes it lags, and you can sense and feel the lag. So anyway, this particular customer had sent us his car, and we found that during test driving, it would only go to 100 kW. And we never tried it on hills or, anything really steep, but it would have had problems in San Francisco, for example, on some of those streets. Well, he got the car back, and he said that it has an acceleration problem that seems to be deteriorating further. And he said that on a hilly section, he was only able to go 40 miles an hour up that hill. And that's reminiscent of the customer in the Malibu Hills who couldn't even get his car home anymore.
Right.
So at this stage, he said he's not sure that it's possible to accelerate to avoid risks. So now we have a safety issue. What we're recommending, of course, is reaching out to Tesla, who is still working on this from an engineering standpoint. We gave them all the data that we had, 6 months ago? Was it summer of last year, I think, or spring?
It was spring of last year at the latest. It may have been even longer than that.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Earlier. Yeah. And they are resolving some of these issues. So the best thing to do is get a hold of Tesla and work on this problem with them. All right. I got another picture to throw up here, guys. And this is... All right, where did we put it? Where did I put it? Yep, it's called LaFerrari. So what we're going to show you here is a one-of-a-kind, not just one of 300, 2015 LaFerrari Ferrari. And this is a scale model that was presented to the owner for a highly custom car. Ferraris are usually red, right? I mean, everybody knows that, right? Red tan is a very popular Ferrari color. I remember a friend of mine, when Testarossas first came out in 1995 or something like that, wanted a yellow Testarossa. And for the first few months, Ferrari said, no, we're not going to do that. He says, now wait, I'm giving you money, I'm buying a car, and I'm asking you to paint it a certain color, and I'm paying for that. What do you mean, no? Well, they finally caved in. A year later, they decided to do it, and he finally got his yellow Testarossa, the only one in the world at the time.
Sure.
And he got a license plate that says Giallo, which is yellow in Italian. Well, this is also a custom color, and they didn't give this customer a hard time about painting it that color, because this color happens to be the same color as his Learjet, his personal jet. And the owner of this car is no other than Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Sammy Hagar. This LaFerrari was supposed to sell at the Barrett-Jackson auction, and it ended up having a battery problem. So they initially went to Ferrari in Italy, and they said, we need a battery. They said, well, we have only one, and it's already spoken for, so we have no battery for you. And oh, by the way, it's $300,000 for this battery. So they were looking for other options, and our name came up because we repair batteries. We've been doing Tesla Roadster batteries and other batteries for many years. And they decided to send the car here, and we took the battery out. By the way, a LaFerrari is not a 100% BEV, battery electric vehicle. Ferrari hasn't dipped their toes in that deep yet. Neither has Lamborghini or Corvette, which is making hybrids.
Correct.
This is a hybrid. But it is an impressive car in many ways. Let me read you some of the spec. It is powered by a naturally aspirated 6.3-liter V12 engine with an electric motor for a combined 949 horsepower and 664 foot-pounds of torque. The rear-wheel drive vehicle is capable of reaching 60 miles an hour in under 3 seconds and reaches a top speed of over 217 miles per hour. It is also equipped with a kinetic energy recovery system, KERS is the acronym for that, which was developed through Ferrari's Formula One cars and provides a burst of extra power at the driver's discretion. Other highlights include a magnetoheliological damper and carbon fiber ceramic disc brakes. The forged aluminum front wheels are size 19-inch, the rears are 20-inch. It sits on top of a carbon fiber monocoque chassis with a double wishbone front suspension, multi-link rear suspension, and the bodywork is also 100% carbon fiber and styled entirely in-house by Ferrari. It is finished in a cream over cream interior with carbon fiber black accents throughout, and then they've got an audio system that they're proud of that they talk about. It includes a special replica model of the vehicle that Hagar received as a gift from Ferrari, and a book on the build process. Now, this car was supposed to sell at the Barrett-Jackson auction in a few days here, actually.
Right.
Despite the fact that we were able to find 2 problems in the battery, the car had some additional problems, and it's not going to cross the auction line, unfortunately. But we were very proud to be able to be involved in a car like this and recognized for our engineering efforts. And what we did was we applied the same principles we do with the other cars, the Tesla Roadster especially. We put our engineering team on this, and the first thing they do is reverse engineer. And they have to reverse engineer in order to find where the components are, what they're doing, how they're interacting. Mm-hmm. And after the reverse engineering effort, we then started the troubleshooting process. And we took everything apart, analyzed every part. We found 2 major problems and resolved those. And the battery was working in the car when we got done. So anyway, we are amazed that the Tesla Roadster battery is a $45,000 battery, and everybody thinks that's extremely expensive and steep. This battery is $300,000, and some tune-ups apparently on this car cost $120,000.
Oh,
so you get some perspective of what it costs. The anticipated auction sale was expected to bring around $4 to $5 million. And it looks like I've got somebody chiming in here. Ivan is lazy is the name, and he says, "What the heck is up, my bald brother?" Thanks for joining us, Ivan. Appreciate you.
And then on Instagram, Mira CLE 0078600 says, "Hi, sir."
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to have you here.
All right, got something else to pop up here. Here is a picture. It's called Comic-0. And as you know, at the Gruber Companies, we love using artificial intelligence. In fact, we have an AI podcast every week. That's tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Those of you that want to join us and theorize and spitball the future of artificial intelligence and how it's going to impact mankind, it's a good place to hang out and just toss some ideas around. But anyway, found out this week that ChatGPT-4, DAL-E, by the way, there's a plugin that goes with it now, is able to do comic strips. And the one that I saw was about a father and son, and it was very touching because they went through their growing experience and then eventually ended up being old together. And so I thought, let me try the Tesla Roadster. So I asked it to create a comic strip for the Tesla Roadster showing its trajectory and impact on the EV revolution. And this is what it came up with.
Well, I'll say, at least they spelled Tesla correctly.
Not bad, right?
Not bad. They, in the first panel, in the second panel, success is not success. And then Third panel is the Tesla Roadster.
And the text blocks are just undistinguishable. It's just gibberish, it looks like.
It's a great start.
Well, as I said, what it produced was admirable and reminiscent of what you would get if you asked an artistically talented grammar school kid to do the same. Check out the typos.
Yes.
But unlike kids, AI learns exponentially faster, and the results are going to soar quickly.
Well, it's if you were to get somebody who knows how to do some copyright, they could take that comic and they could do something with that.
I
Very
don't doubt
easily.
that. But yet there's another profession that may begin to lose some people.
Yeah.
I mean, it in the first version I saw, the story was touching and made sense. In this one, I've got gibberish. I probably
Right.
could have played with it a bit more and gotten something better. But there are many professions that are going to be affected by this because AI will generate not only the images, but the storyline, and then eventually the words, and get those right.
And AI is learning so fast.
There's another image, by the way, that will keep you sober, and that's Comic-1. And someone posted after I posted this, yeah, AI doesn't always get it right. And in this case, you'll see why. There we go. And it has something to do with the legs. There aren't enough there, I think.
Overall, it was very impressive. But then you start looking at the number of arms that are there and the number of legs that are there, and you realize there's a little bit of a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
You got just a little bit of a problem.
So another thing that we've been tracking is the progress that, let me go back here just for a moment, the progress that Marco Nolte in Germany has been making with that Tesla Roadster replacement battery pack. I do have an image here that we can throw up, guys. Let's do that. It is going to be called Marco-1. I should have brought up the images of those vents too, because I have both of those as well. And what he's done here is he's taken the frame of the Tesla Roadster battery pack, manufactured in Thailand by a barbecue manufacturer years ago. I can never leave that out because it's
Yes,
cute.
that's right.
And created a replica of it to house Taycan modules. And what he's actually been able to do is to get the car driving. And there's a video on one of the Facebook sites that shows him driving this thing around a bit.
Mm-hmm.
He still has some issues. There's not much progress, he says in his latest email, as to what I posted on Facebook in the last days, him driving it. But that last step, getting standby and range calculation to work, has actually been a much larger problem than I had anticipated. And again, he talks about his video if you're interested. The other thing that he's concerned about, he says, need to take the pack apart now to assemble the new design pack, which then has cooling added and will be mounted into the original ESS enclosure. He's not even sure if cooling will be necessary, as these modules get warm far less than the ones in the original Roadster, but it just doesn't feel right to have an uncooled pack.
I think I would agree with him on that.
Yeah, there's well, actually, Martin Eberhard pointed this out. The Tesla Roadster battery pack is the most coddled pack on Earth because they had no idea at the time they were developing it how it's going to be used, what will happen in an accident, what happens when you drive it in a lake. And so I agree with you, Marco. I would probably err on the side of caution and go overboard with your design and put some cooling in there, because that's also going to make it more sellable.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't too many risk takers, I think, in the Roadster world. I also told him that there are a couple of other people, actually 3 people, that are working on something similar. 2 of them are in Germany, one here in the U.S., and his comment there was, the more the merrier. I mean, it's good for the Roadster community. So Marco's got his heart and his head in the right place.
Definitely he does.
We need a solution. And he's saying, I hope that their designs succeed. He was talking about one in the U.S. He says it's a very smart design in several aspects, and there's some Euro packs that also look promising. But they're still using the original Roadster battery management system, he says. And he apparently does not, so we could avoid using that and getting something more current or state-of-the-art.
We've got a good question that just came up from Android Alchemist. He says, I struggle with the Roadster, and here's why. The Roadsters made between March 2008 and April 22nd, 2009, over concerns that the rear hub was under-torqued and could come loose. This could cause the driver to lose control of the car and cause it to crash. Owners reported battery failures, a demon-possessed tire pressure monitoring system, water intrusion in the headlamps, and a lot of road noise. Now, despite being the first highway-legal lithium-ion battery-powered production car, the original Tesla Roadster itself felt pretty crude for the huge price tag. What are your thoughts?
Okay. There's a lot to unpack
There's
there.
a lot to unpack there.
The huge price tag, by the way, was felt not only by the people that eventually bought the car, but by Tesla. They were on the verge of bankruptcy a number of times through that process. A lot of unanticipated issues came up. It was a prototype vehicle, and in some ways still is. But again, without Tesla having persevered and brought something to market, I'm not sure that the EV revolution would look anything like it does today, or might even have occurred.
I think it might have been the hybrid revolution instead, honestly.
Good point. Yeah. So let's unpack some of this. So the Roadsters made between 2008, 2000, I think we're talking about the 1.5 Roadsters here.
Yep.
And that the rear hub was under-torqued and could come loose. I know of no examples of any Roadsters, 1.5 Roadsters, that have come through our service center that have had that issue. And more than likely, if that was a concern, Tesla would have repaired that or retrofitted that issue. I know there were problems with the original gearbox, which eventually went to, help me here, Magna was the first one. Anyway, they went to another torque box manufacturer who actually ended up developing the single-speed transmission quite successpuply.
And you had said Borg Warner was one of the first,
Yep.
was the one that was developing the first transmissions. Yeah.
So the upshot here, he's saying this could cause a driver to lose control of the rear and cause it to crash. Yeah, again, have heard no documented examples of anything like that. Doesn't say it didn't occur, but it's possible that Tesla got in front of that right away.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says that that the owners reported battery failures. Yes. In fact, one of the things we were going to talk about here in the podcast was the bleed test errors. The typical battery failures occurred because of rivet problems on the monitoring plates or the brick plates and going to the BMB boards. What they used was pop rivets where the clamping force is unpredictable. For those of you that have used pop rivets, you have a steel core that you stretch enough to have it come loose, and in the meantime, you're compressing two aluminum rings to create some pressure. Well, when and how that snaps is never predictable. A far more predictable method of torquing is torquing something using hardware, or what they ended up doing later to retrofit and get rid of the pop rivets was a ultrasonic weld for the bonding wires directly to the bonding plate. So yes, there were a lot of battery failures, and they're still occurring in some of the original 1.5 cars or the cars that have had rivet-type sheets. It's a standard repair that we do, and we now actually do bleed tests on every single car that comes in to flush out these kinds of problems. It starts usually with an intermittent and then some errors being reported, and eventually ends in the car being undrivable. Then he talks about demon-possessed tire pressure monitor systems. The TPMS errors are still with us, but if you change them every 5 to 6 years or so, those problems usually are either minimized or gone completely.
Yes.
And we usually ask the owners when their cars come in, when was the last time you've had your TPMS air or your TPMS sensors in the wheels replaced? And if it's more than 5 years, we suggest doing it while it's here, while your tires are being changed, because each one of those TPMS sensors has a little battery in it, one of those watch batteries, and they're not replaceable. In other words, there's nothing to take apart because it's molded and enclosed. Water intrusion in the headlamps. One of the ways that we resolve that is there are rubber cups on the back of the headlamps, and those were typically held on with nylon tie wraps. Nylon tie wraps get brittle, they get old, they break, they snap, rubber stretches. What we do is replace that, and we seal up the headlights or the headlamps. And then do the repairs. Blistering and flaking, the clear coat coming off on the headlights is another very common problem. And what we've most recently done is we have a UV-resistant clear coat that's much better and lasts a lot longer. But what we've been doing after repair is actually putting a PPF on the headlamp, which now not only protects it, but removes this flaking capability completely. And if you're into cosmetics, you get a smoked PPF or, and it really looks sharp on those headlights.
Oh, it does. Those TPMS systems, they didn't come to the United States to cars until the early 2000s.
I didn't know that.
So when the Roadster TPMS system was out there, they were... the 1997 Chevrolet Corvette was the first American automobile with a TPMS system, and it wasn't until 2000 when the Clinton administration passed a law called the TREAD Act that TPMS systems became common, and even then it took a couple years. That means when Tesla Roadsters came out, the TPMS system concept was only about 5 years old.
So we might be getting early generations that were more failure prone.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then then he says a lot of road noise. Okay. It's a two-seater sports car. And I'm used to driving them, by the way. I've owned a number of them, not just Roadsters.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of expect that noise. Some people believe in sound deadening in the cabin. Well, now you've got a hard top or a soft top that's going to transfer some noise. And the seals on those cars aren't perfect, so you're going to get some hissing noise and wind noise coming through. Mm-hmm. It just comes with the territory. It's not ever going to be a Mercedes. Now, there were some road noise issues that were repaired, though. I do believe that is the case.
Sure, I think so.
And despite, he says, being the first highway-legal lithium-ion battery-powered production car, the original Tesla itself felt pretty crude for the huge price tag. They were selling Roadsters under cost after everything was said and done.
I would rephrase that just a little bit. Despite being a little bit crude because it's a first-generation vehicle of its type, it's the first highway-legal lithium-ion battery-powered production car in existence.
Yeah.
I do remember when the Roadster first came out, that is what it was all about. Mm-hmm. The fact that you had an electric car that was not a Toyota Prius, that was some underpowered grocery getter that had this little battery in the back that might get you a little bit and increase your gas mileage. It was actual electricity only. There was no gasoline for it. Yep. And it was fast, man. It was fast. So that was the vibe around the Roadster when it came out.
Yeah.
Not that it was a crude car or anything. It was kind of a little bit expected.
You look at your other low production cars, Koenigsegg, okay, the Rimac Navara, for example. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're pushing north of $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. It is remarkable that Tesla survived.
It really is. It really is. And when you think about quality problems, go back to some of the Lamborghinis. Mm-hmm. Look at the Huracan. And Aventador and how famous Lamborghini is for its quality issues, mm-hmm. because they're low production run cars. They're all hand built. They're all they're crap pieces of art. And if you own a Lamborghini, you know that problems are just part of the game, and you want it to be better, but you know that it's going to take a long time to get there.
It used to be a funny discussion in the exotic car world that you have the Italians, which design with their heart, but their engineering expertise isn't quite like the Germans that design with their head, but their styling isn't there. Look at the Porsches, for example.
Yeah.
You know, now some people love them. Don't get me wrong. You know, but you take a well-designed Lamborghini with the angular lines, or a Ferrari with the smooth flowing lines, the Pininfarina days. You know, the Pagani type cars. There's a heart and soul in those cars, and it's not just about engineering, and you kind of expected it to fail. My Ferrari, oh my God, the tune-ups were just a killer.
Yeah.
And there was constantly stuff breaking on it, you know? I mean, I actually had the water pump, for example. The aluminum was eaten away by electrolysis. Well, it's a crappy design, you know? So I ended up putting in I forget what it was. It was a piece of metal that actually decayed before the aluminum would. It's what they put in the VAP coolers.
Oh, okay, sure.
But anyway, so yeah, staying with that, it looks like Android Alchemist has another comment. He says, so it's more of a collector's item vehicle, and I credit the EV vehicles to the hybrid vehicles as well as the revolutionary battery.
Well, and he gets the point there. That battery, that was the revolutionary part more than anything else.
You know, it was an afterthought. No one at the time that they came out with the Tesla Roadster, there were already hybrids on the road. They were pouch batteries. No one had yet taken a small cylindrical 18650 cell, multiplied it times almost 7,000, and connected them in parallel and series to come up with a kW rating.
Yeah.
It's the first 18650 lithium-ion multi-cell pack. And it was, again, one of Martin Eberhardt's and Mark Tarpening's designs, in that they were in the ebooks business and they were familiar with laptop batteries, and they extrapolated that out and said, why can't we take a whole bunch of these cells that work quite well in power tools and laptops and just multiply them and put them in a car?
Right.
And that's when the T0 went from 80 miles to 400 miles range.
Exactly. So it's, and I love the question, why not?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they said. Why not?
That's what it's allegedly, and this is legendary, but it could be true. I guess at one point Elon was looking at one of his kids' cars, one of the little toy cars, and he saw that it was die cast, and he said, why can't you scale this? Why can't you do this on a much larger scale? And that's when he hooked up with the Italian company. And we now have large castings,
That's right.
castings. And again, Tesla's leading a charge here. The other auto manufacturers are paying attention and saying, why didn't we do this?
Yeah, it's the old thought of, we've always done it this way before, so why would you, versus the new thought of, why not try it?
Right. Yep. Let's see, we've got another item here, and I don't think I have a picture of this, so I'll just give you the story on this one. If you remember, in Fort Lauderdale, many months ago, there was a Tesla Roadster that got stolen from a Tesla service center, the Fort Lauderdale Service Center. The whole Roadster community was up in arms. How could this happen? And, and of course the blame immediate, who's responsible, who was negligent, all that stuff, before the facts came in. And then the facts began to come in. The car was found, and it was found like a mile from the service center.
Right.
But it apparently had been driven much more than that. Now, maybe they had a change of heart, and the thieves decided, well, maybe we should return this Roadster, or maybe they lived around the service center. Who knows? But anyway, it was found parked in such a way that the sheriff was summoned, and they actually towed the car to an impound lot, which usually indicates it wasn't just a parking infraction, probably left in the middle of the road, obstructing something, so that they had to tow it away.
Right.
There was a bit of damage on the car, but no major body damage. There was some scratch on the headlight, and I think one of the doors was tweaked a bit, where the hinge might have been compromised, but it was bricked. So now fast forward quite a bit. This was VIN 541 in Fort Lauderdale, And the current owner is still working with Tesla and with the insurance company, and it appears to be at a standstill currently. Tesla will not proceed with the repairs until the insurance claim is settled. And at this point, any information regarding details is being suppressed or at least held back because attorneys are involved at this point.
Sure.
Which is a normal course of action. As soon as attorneys are involved, then basically you're not allowed to say anything anymore, and you let the attorneys talk to each other.
Yeah. Well, they figure that anything that you say will be used against you,
and it will be used against you in a court of law. Isn't that
Absolutely.
the Miranda? Right? So anyway, it looks like it is in process currently, and as I pointed out, there are some outcomes here. And I guess I didn't list those, but one of them is the car may just be purchased by Tesla. And this particular owner, may be interested in selling the car.
Right.
The other part of that is we don't at this point know whether the battery pack is compromised. It turns out that a 3.0 battery pack was successfully put into the car, obviously because the thieves drove it away.
Right.
And so we don't know whether that pack is still usable, whether it got bricked, and if there's any damage there. But that is the latest update. I know it's frustrating for the owner. It's frustrating for the community. And I'm sure it's frustrating for Tesla as well, because this has to be pretty embarrassing for them.
Mm-hmm.
Take a car to a service center and it gets stolen. All right. I think we're getting to the point where we can wrap up. I did want to share one more thing with you here. If we can pop that up, Jesse, I think I have a picture of this one. Bleed test. No, I guess I don't. All right, so I'll tell you what it is. There's a lot of talk about calculated amp hour capacity. Calculated amp hour capacity is a good barometer as to the health of a battery. They're even beginning to develop programs now for the later model Teslas so that you can get a CAC reading, calculated amp hour capacity. On any given day when a car turns up on Bring a Trailer, someone reminds them, we want to see CAC. And then we usually post our newsletter that tells the seller how to gather CAC. For those of you that are thinking of selling a car, it's an important parameter that a prospective buyer is going to demand, request, and want. And if you go to our website, Gruber Motors, go to newsletters, one of the newsletters deals with how to extract CAC. Now, calculated amp hour capacity calculation is a complicated algorithm. And there are ways that it can be tweaked, like if you do only low-level charging all the time, your yellow charge cable, for example, that can affect your CAC. So here's a way that you can correct some of the imbalances in a CAC to more accurately reflect the actual battery health. First, drive down the Roadster to 60% state of charge and wait an hour. Then charge the Roadster at 100% or in range mode and wait an hour. Wait for it to complete, of course. And then drive it back down to 60% and wait an hour. Typically, if your CAC is off, this will give some level of correction. Now, it's not going to give you units in 10 units or 20 units. It might give you a couple, 3 or so.
Well, I think more importantly is that it's a way for the car to reset itself as it's calculating the CAC more than your CAC kind of is what it is. It may be that the calculator is getting off and needs to be recalibrated.
Right.
So this is a way that over time you can get the car to recalibrate itself and get you a more accurate CAC.
And by the way, I do have an image for that bleed test error that we talked about earlier. Jesse, if you can bring up bleed test image, what you'll see here is a pictorial, what Tesla has in one of their service manuals. And you can see what the rivet looks like on the left there. And we're counting on sufficient compression taking place. The sandwich there is going to be a thin wire, probably about 22 gauge wire, I would say, that then travels back to a socket for the battery management board that's also on the sheet. And to the right there, you can see what the retrofit that Tesla did to get rid of this rivet. They would drill out the rivet, they would capture the wire, strip it back, and then use an ultrasonic welder to weld that wire directly onto the bonding plate. The way that we do it is we also remove the rivet, and then we use PC hardware, basically quarter-inch hardware, and we torque the, there's an eyelet on the end of that wire. We then torque that to a very specific torque setting, and that reconnects that wire in a very reliable method to that bonding plate. And again, as we mentioned earlier, every Roadster that comes through our service center gets a full diagnostic workup, and this is one of them. We look at those at the bleed test. Well, that's kind of a duplication.
Yeah, well.
we do a bleed test. And we carefully analyze whether there are any kind of issues there, impedance issues, and then make a recommendation. All right, I think we're coming to the end of our Tesla Roadster podcast. As always, we enjoyed having you join us. And we do these every Tuesday at 11 o'clock. The EV podcast is at 10 o'clock, just an hour before that. Tomorrow is the AI podcast, those of you that want to join us. And any of these videos or any of these podcasts that you missed, you can see them in video format on our YouTube site under Live. So thanks for joining us.
Look forward to seeing you this next week. Take care.